For 20 years, no one had ever seen the millionaire Adekunle Adebayo smile. Not the staff at his Ikoyi mansion, nor his business partners. But in the early hours of one morning, as Adekunle fought alone against a fever that nearly killed him, Funke Adeyemi, the mansion's cleaner, did something no one had ever done for him. The next morning, for the first time in 2 decades, Adekunle smiled. What that woman did that night would change both their lives forever. Adekunle Adebayo had not smiled in 20 years. None of the staff at the Ikoyi mansion could remember seeing the man wear any expression other than coldness. His lips were always pressed into a thin line, as if smiling was a luxury he had long since decided to abandon. Anyone who knew his story understood why. At 16, on a dark stretch of the Lagos-Sagamu expressway, his father's car somersaulted 3 times. Chief Adebayo, a man who laughed loud and hugged tight, did not walk away from that car. Adekunle did, but he never walked again. His legs stopped working that night, and along with them, his joy. The mansion was too big for one person. 3 floors, vast gardens, rooms no one ever used. Everything was clean. Everything was organized. Everything was silent. The staff walked on tiptoe. Speaking loudly was forbidden. Laughing near the ogre was unthinkable. Anyone who tried to be friendly was met with a glare that cut down any good intention. Auntie Rose, the head housekeeper, had worked there for 12 years. She knew exactly how to move through the house without causing irritation. She knew every detail. What time he woke up, how he liked his coffee, the precise angle to adjust the curtains. One morning, while arranging Adekunle's medicines on his office desk, he asked without looking up from his computer, "When is the new cleaner starting?" "Tomorrow, Ogakunle. Her name is Funke. She was recommended by Mrs. Sonia from number 42. And the other 3 who came through here in the last 2 months? Auntie Rose swallowed hard. "They asked to leave, sir." "Asked or fled?" Auntie Rose didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew no one lasted long in that house. The salary was good, but the weight of living with that man was too heavy. Adekunle spun his wheelchair towards the window. Down below, the garden was perfect. Everything in its place. Everything beautiful. And everything devoid of life. "Let's see how long this one lasts," he said, returning to his work. On the other side of Ikoyi, almost pressed against the high walls of the mansions, was a bustling community, full of commerce, people, noise, and life. It was there, in a room and parlor with thin walls and a roof that leaked during heavy rains, that Funke Adeyemi was bathing her son, Toby, before bed. The boy was a 1.5 years old. He laughed at everything. He laughed when his mother made funny faces, when water splashed on his face, when his grandmother, Iya Funke, sang old folk songs no one else remembered. "Mama, have you seen the house where I'll be working tomorrow?" Funke asked as she dried her son. Iya Funke was sitting on the sofa, mending a pair of trousers. Her reading glasses slipped down her nose with each movement of the needle. "I saw it over the wall once. It looks like something from a Nollywood movie. And the owner? What have you heard?" "I've heard things. They say he is as fierce as a guard dog, that he doesn't talk to anyone, and he looks down on everyone from his wheelchair." Funke placed Toby in his cot and covered him with the yellow blanket Iya Funke had made. The boy grabbed the edge of the blanket and closed his eyes, content. "A rich, grumpy man doesn't scare me, Mama. I've faced worse." Iya Funke looked up from her sewing and gave her daughter that look only a mother can. A look that says more than words. "Be careful, Funke. A big house has big rules. Don't go trying to straighten the world on your first day." Funke chuckled softly. "You know me. I just clean the house. If the man wants to be a grump, that's his problem." But Iya Funke knew her daughter better than she knew herself. She knew Funke wasn't the type to stay quiet in the face of injustice. Ever since she was a little girl, she would confront anyone at school, on the bus, in the queue, at the clinic, always politely, but never backing down. Once, at 11, she had confronted the owner of the local shop, who had deliberately given Iya Funke the wrong change. The man returned the money without argument. That night, before turning off the light, Funke stared at the ceiling and thought about the mansion. She thought about the salary that would help replace the leaking roof. She thought about Toby's diapers, the milk, the overdue electricity bill. She thought about the life she wanted to give her son. She didn't think about Adekunle. She had no way of knowing that the man, sitting alone in a dark office across the avenue, was also staring at a ceiling, unable to sleep. Not because of bills, but because of an emptiness that all the money in the world couldn't fill. They were 2 completely different lives, separated only by an avenue. But what no one there imagined was that destiny had already woven its thread, and that man's life was about to be turned upside down. The next morning, Funke arrived at 7 a.m. The electronic gate of the mansion was so high she had to crane her neck to see the security camera. She pressed the intercom button and waited. 15 seconds. 30. A whole minute. The morning breeze felt cool on her neck and carried the scent of freshly cut grass. Good morning. It's Funke, the new cleaner. The voice that replied belonged to Auntie Rose, curt and quick. Enter. Follow the service entrance straight on the side of the house. The gate opened slowly, and Funke walked along the stone path that skirted the garden. The plants were trimmed to perfection. Not a leaf out of place, not a wilted flower. Everything so neat it looked like a magazine set. At the service area door, Auntie Rose was waiting with her arms crossed. Good morning, Auntie Rose. It's a pleasure. I'm Funke. Auntie Rose looked her up and down. Funke wore simple jeans, a white t-shirt, and worn-out trainers. She carried a bag on her shoulder, and a smile on her face that seemed out of place in that serious environment. Good morning. The uniform is in the changing room. You can change and come back here, and I'll explain the routine. Yes, ma. The uniform was blue. Trousers, a button-up shirt, and a discreet apron. All new, all the right size, all completely plain. Funke put it on, looked in the small mirror in the changing room, and tied her hair into a tight bun. She secured it with the hairband she always wore on her wrist and smoothed down her shirt. Ready, she said to herself. Auntie Rose explained the routine with the precision of someone who had done it dozens of times. Cleaning the upstairs bedrooms in the morning, the living rooms and office in the afternoon. The kitchen was the responsibility of the cook, Mama Sikira, who had worked there for 8 years. The garden belonged to the gardener, Baba Emeka. One important thing, Auntie Rose said, stopping in the hallway before the office. When you need to clean in there, enter silently, do your work, and leave. Don't start a conversation, don't ask anything, don't make noise. Funke looked at the closed office door. He doesn't like people. Auntie Rose pressed her lips together. He likes silence. I understand. Silence. But Funke was not a woman of silence. Wherever she went, the atmosphere changed. She was the kind who needed a bit of noise, a conversation, a feeling that a house was alive. She worked all morning in the upstairs bedrooms, and even there alone, she hummed quietly while dusting the furniture. It was stronger than her. Wherever Funke went, she brought the sound of life. In the empty rooms of that mansion, her voice was the only human sound the walls had heard in a long time. At 2 in the afternoon, it was time to clean the office. She knocked on the door. No one answered. She knocked again, a little louder. Come in. The voice from inside was deep and impatient. Funke opened the door to find a huge office. Bookshelves covered 2 entire walls. A dark wooden desk occupied the center, covered in papers and computer screens. And behind it, with his back to the window, was Adekunle. He looked up from his computer and stared at her without a word. Funke felt that heavy gaze, evaluating every detail, measuring her the kind of look that makes most people lower their heads and apologize for existing. Good afternoon. I've come to clean the office, she said in a firm voice. Adekunle didn't reply. He turned his gaze back to the screen. Funke started in the corner of the room, dusting the shelves with careful movements. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock sounded like a hammer. All that silence was unsettling for someone used to the bustle of her community. She lasted 5 minutes. That's a beautiful collection of books, she said, wiping a shelf. Have you read all of them, sir? Adekunle stopped typing, slowly raising his eyes. I asked for silence. No. Auntie Rose asked for it. A 3-second pause. Well, I'm asking for it now. Funke gripped the cloth in her fingers but didn't lower her gaze. I'm sorry. It's just that a house this quiet makes me anxious. If it makes you anxious, there are plenty of noisy houses that need a cleaner. The tone was harsh, calculated, the kind of phrase designed to put someone in their place and make it clear who was in charge. Funke felt her blood heat up, but she took a deep breath. She remembered her mother telling her not to try and fix the world on her first day. You're right, Ogakunle. I'll finish up here and be done. She finished cleaning in silence. Every movement firm, every gesture precise. No more words, no backward glances. When she left and closed the door, Adekunle stared at the space where she had been. No one ever talked back like that. No one. And that woman had done it without even raising her voice. Funke's first week at the mansion passed slowly. Each day was a new attempt to do her job without clashing with her boss's difficult temper. She cleaned, organized, wiped down the old furniture, and tried to stay quiet when she entered the office. Tried, because staying quiet was the hardest thing in the world for her. On Wednesday, While cleaning the main living room, she found Auntie Rose putting some papers away in a cabinet. "Auntie Rose, can I ask something?" "Depends. Has he always been like this? So angry?" Auntie Rose glanced around, checking if they were alone. She lowered her voice. "Since the accident, 20 years ago." "What accident?" "It's not my place to tell, and it's not your place to ask. Just do your work, Funke." Funke raised her hands in surrender. All right. Just curious." But the curiosity lingered in her mind. A man of 36, handsome, owner of all this, stuck in a wheelchair, never smiling, never talking, not really living. There had to be something behind all that bad temper. She noticed that Adekunle ate lunch alone in his office. The tray came and went almost untouched. She noticed he spent hours staring out the window, doing nothing. She noticed that sometimes, late at night, the light in his room was still on. On Friday, the problem happened. Funke was cleaning the office when she bumped into a stack of folders on an auxiliary table. The folders fell to the floor with a sound that sliced through the silence of the entire house. Papers scattered across the rug. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, bending down to gather everything. Adekunle dropped what he was doing and spun his wheelchair towards her. His face was red. "Do you have any idea what these documents are?" "I know. I'm sorry. It was an accident." "An accident? You've been working here for a week and you've already messed up my entire office." Funke gathered the papers quickly, her hands trembling not from fear, but from contained anger. "I'm picking them up. Everything will be put back in its place." "Everything will be put back in its place." These folders were in a specific order. "Do you think you can just stack them any way you like?" She stopped, raised her face, and looked directly into his eyes. "Ogakunle, I dropped them by accident. I've already apologized. Now, if you want me to organize them in the correct order, tell me what the order is." Shouting at me won't put a single paper back in its place. The office fell silent. Adekunle opened his mouth to respond, but Funke had already gone back to collecting the papers. Calm, methodical, showing no nervousness. He just watched her, expecting the scene that always happened with other employees. The desperate apology, the tears, the promise it would never happen again. None of it came. Funke placed the folders on the table, one by one. She tapped each one lightly to align the sheets. "There. If you want to reorganize them in your order, they're all there. But I guarantee not a single page is missing." She left the office without waiting for a reply. In the hallway, Auntie Rose stood with wide eyes. She had heard every word. "Girl, are you crazy?" "Crazy for what?" "I dropped them. I apologized. And I picked them up. What else did he want?" "He wanted you to be afraid." Funke adjusted her apron and tucked a stray hair back into her bun. "I'm afraid of overdue bills and a child's fever. I'm not afraid of an angry man." Auntie Rose shook her head, but a small smile escaped the corner of her mouth. It had been a long time since anyone had stood up to Adekunle like that. That evening, back in her community, Funke bathed Toby, warmed up the leftover stew from lunch, and sat on her bed. Her back ached, her feet were swollen. It had been a long day. Iya Funke appeared at the bedroom door with a cup of tea. "How was the week, my daughter?" "The man is difficult, Mama. Really difficult. It's like he's angry at the whole world." "And you've already made trouble?" Funke took the cup and blew on the tea before taking a sip. A little bit." "Iya." Funke sighed deeply. "Funke, for God's sake, calm down, Mama. I know how to take care of myself, but I'll tell you something. That man isn't entirely bad, Mama. He's just wounded in his soul, and he uses that anger as a shield. And you know what? I know a sad gaze when I see one." Iya Funke looked at her daughter and remained quiet. She knew that look. It was the same look Funke got when she decided to take care of someone. She had seen it when her daughter brought home an injured dog, when she helped a sick neighbor, when she spent sleepless nights with Toby, when he had a fever. And that, Iya Funke knew, was the beginning of trouble. 3 weeks passed. Funke didn't quit, didn't cry in the bathroom, didn't complain to Auntie Rose. And this bothered Adekunle more than he could admit. All the previous cleaners had lasted 10 days at most. One left crying after he criticized the way she mopped the floor. Another handed in her notice when he threw a flower arrangement she had placed in the living room into the bin. The third simply didn't return after lunch. Funke stayed, and she didn't stay quiet. Every time he made a sharp comment, she replied, not with rudeness, but with a firmness Adekunle was not used to receiving. One Tuesday morning, he complained that the hallway floor had shoe marks. "Wheel marks, Ogakunle," Funke replied without stopping her sweeping. "I clean up shoe marks. You pass over the same spot with your wheels 10 times a day." He narrowed his eyes. Are you implying that I dirty my own house? I'm not implying, I'm stating it. But don't worry, I'll clean it again. And she cleaned it, without complaining, without a sour face, without drama. She did the job, and moved on to the next task. Adekunle was left alone in the hallway, staring at the clean floor, not knowing what to make of this woman who didn't operate like the others. On Thursday of that week, Femi, the family lawyer, showed up at the mansion for a meeting. He handled everything: contracts, lawsuits, public image. He entered the office, sat in the leather armchair, and opened his briefcase. Kunle, we need to talk about the Lekki proposal. They want 20% above what we offered. Tell them to refuse. It's not that simple. If we refuse, we'll miss the bidding deadline. And I said to refuse. Femi knew that tone. He didn't insist, put the papers away, and changed the subject. Another thing, who's the new cleaning lady? Why? Because I passed her in the hallway, and she wished me a good day with a smile that looked like a toothpaste advert. The others barely looked up. Adekunle turned his wheelchair towards the window. Her name is Funke. She's been working here for 3 weeks. 3 weeks? That's a record. She's noisy, meddlesome, and doesn't know her place. Femi crossed his arms. But she's still here. Adekunle didn't answer. On Friday, the meeting with the Lekki investors went badly. The group rejected Adekunle's counteroffer and closed a deal with another developer. He lost a 40 million naira contract. He returned home with a grim face and a mood worse than usual. Funke was in the hallway, finishing cleaning the pictures on the wall. She didn't know what had happened. When she saw Adekunle speeding past in his chair, his jaw clenched and his eyes dark, she tried to be friendly. Good afternoon, Ogakunle. Is everything all right? He stopped the chair. No, everything is not all right. Would you like me to bring you some tea? Mama Sikira just made a fresh pot. I don't want tea. I want people to do their jobs without trying to be my friend. Funke slung her cleaning cloth over her shoulder and crossed her arms. I'm not trying to be your friend, Ogakunle. I'm offering you tea. It's different. To you, it might be different. To me, it's the same thing. People who try to get close always want something. Funke looked at him and felt the urge to retort. She felt like saying that not everyone wanted his money, that there were people in the world who offered tea because they were polite, because they saw someone else looking like they needed it. But she didn't say any of that. All right, she said in a calm voice. No tea. And she went back to cleaning the pictures. Adekunle remained in the hallway for a few more seconds. He watched her back as she wiped with the same care as always. He thought about saying something but didn't. He turned his chair and went to his room. That woman was disturbing the silence he had built over 20 years, and he didn't know if that irritated him or frightened him. When Funke finished her work and left through the service door, the sun was already setting behind the Ikoyi mansions. She walked to the bus stop, took out her phone, and called her mother. Mama, I'm on my way. How is Toby? He just fell asleep. He's an angel. And work? Funke sighed. The man lost a deal and took it out on me. And what did you do? I offered him tea. Iya Funke laughed on the other end of the line. My daughter, you are something else. Funke smiled and hung up. Deep down, she knew she was starting to care about that man, and that was dangerous. Toby's creche closed on a Monday. A burst pipe in the bathroom. A leak in the ceiling. No timeline for reopening. Funke received the message at 6 a.m., with her son already bathed and ready to go. Mama, can you watch him today? Iya Funke coughed on the other end of the phone. She'd had the flu for 3 days. My child, I can barely get up. My whole body is aching. Funke closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the kitchen wall. She considered her options. Her neighbor worked. Her cousin had traveled. There was no one else. It's okay, Mama. Stay in bed. I'll figure something out. Are you going to take the boy to the Adebayo house? I have to. I'll hide him in the service area, finish my work quickly, and no one will notice. Funke, if that man finds out, he won't find out. Trust me. Funke entered through the side of the mansion as usual, but this time with her heart pounding. She set her son up in a corner of the laundry room, surrounded by cushions she took from the service sofa, with some biscuits and an old phone playing cartoons without sound. Stay quiet, my love. Mummy is just nearby. The boy looked at her with his big eyes and smiled. Funke kissed his forehead and went to work. The morning went well. Toby stayed quiet, entertained by the cartoons. Funke went to the laundry room every 40 minutes to check on him, change his diaper, and give him water. Auntie Rose almost caught her once, but Funke diverted to the bathroom just in time. At 3 p.m., everything changed. Funke went up to clean Adekunle's room and found the door ajar. She pushed it gently. The room was dark, the curtains drawn, the air hot and heavy. Ogakunle? No answer. She took another step in and saw him. Adekunle was in bed, his face red and sweaty, his eyes closed, his hands clutching the bedsheet so tightly his knuckles were white. Oga Kunle, are you unwell? He opened his eyes, but his gaze was lost, unfocused. Get out of here, he murmured in a weak voice. Funke moved closer and placed her hand on his forehead. It was burning. You are burning with fever. You need a doctor. No, no doctors, no hospitals. But Oga Kunle. I said no. The voice was weak. It wasn't the voice of a man giving an order. It was the voice of someone afraid. Funke stood there, looking at him. She saw the sweat on his brow, his trembling hands, his short, rapid breaths. Okay, no doctor, but I'm going to take care of you. She ran to the kitchen, got a bowl of cold water, clean towels, and the thermometer she found in the bathroom drawer. She returned to the room and started applying compresses to his forehead and neck, just as Iya Funke used to do when she was a child and had a high fever in the rainy season. 39.5 degrees, she read on the thermometer. You need to take an antipyretic. Where are your medicines? Drawer of the bedside table, he said in a hoarse voice. Funke found the medicines, read the names, picked out one she recognized, gave him the tablet with water, and went back to changing the compresses. How long have you been like this? Since yesterday. Since yesterday? And why didn't you call anyone? He didn't answer. Funke understood. That man was so afraid of hospitals that he preferred to lie alone burning with fever than to ask for help. 20 years of trauma did that to a person. At 6 p.m., Auntie Rose went home. Mama Sikira had already left at 4. The mansion was empty. Funke went down to the laundry room, picked Toby up in her arms, and went upstairs. Come, my love. Mummy needs to take care of someone. She placed the boy in a corner of Adekunle's room with the yellow blanket and the cushions. The boy was drowsy, almost asleep. Funke arranged everything around him and returned to the head of the bed. The night was long. The fever rose and fell. Adekunle was delirious, saying things that made no sense. He called out for his father twice. The third time, he gripped Funke's hand tightly. Papa, I'm sorry, he said. His voice choked with emotion. Funke felt her eyes sting. She held his hand with both of hers and stayed there, firm, without moving. It's okay. I'm here. You can rest. He squeezed her hand and closed his eyes. Funke spent the entire night changing compresses, checking his temperature, giving him water when he could swallow. Toby slept peacefully in the corner, and she, sitting on the edge of that bed, cared for a man who had treated her with coldness because that was what she knew how to do. Care, even when no one asked. The fever began to break around 4 a.m. Funke checked the thermometer one more time. 37.2. Still high, but the worst had passed. She let out a slow breath, feeling her entire body heavy with exhaustion. Her eyes burned. Her hands were wrinkled from wringing wet cloths. She changed the last compress, arranged the sheet around Adekunle, and checked if he was breathing properly. His face was calmer. His hands had released the sheet. The sweat was drying. Toby stirred in his corner, making a soft noise, the little sound of a child looking for his mother in the dark. Funke went to him and picked him up, cradling him against her chest. He snuggled into her as he always did, his head on her shoulder, his little hand holding the collar of her shirt. There, my love. Go back to sleep. Mummy's here. She sat down in the leather armchair next to the bed. It was the softest armchair she had ever sat in. The leather was cool, but it warmed up quickly with the heat from her body and the boys. Funke leaned her head back and thought she would just close her eyes for a minute. Just a minute to rest them. Just one. She was asleep in seconds. The sun pierced through a gap in the curtains at 7:12 am. A ray of light cut across the room and fell on Adekunle's face. He opened his eyes slowly. His head ached. His body was weak. His mouth was dry. He turned his head to the side and saw her in the armchair beside the bed. Funke was sleeping, her body contorted, her head lolling to one side. The boy was in her lap, clinging to her shirt, with the yellow blanket wrapped around his legs. On the floor was a bowl of water. On the bedside table, the thermometer, an open box of medicine, glasses with remnants of water, and a folded damp cloth. Adekunle stared at the scene without moving. The entire room told the story of what had happened during the night. The woman he treated with harshness had spent the whole night caring for him, without asking for anything, without telling anyone, without demanding payment. And she had brought her son, because she had no one to leave him with. Adekunle's mouth moved slowly, almost without him noticing. The corners of his lips turned up not much, just enough that if someone were watching, they would have noticed that the man was smiling. A small, timid smile, hidden for 20 years. It lasted only a few seconds. Then he closed his eyes again and lay in silence, listening to Funke's calm breathing and the little noises Toby made in his sleep. At 8 a.m., Funke woke with a start. She looked at the clock, then at the bed. Adekunle had his eyes closed, seeming to be asleep. She got up slowly, went downstairs with Toby in her arms, placed the boy in the laundry room, and returned to the room. She checked the fever. 36.8. Normal. Thank God, she whispered. She began to tidy up the mess, collecting the used towels, emptying the bowl in the bathroom sink, putting the medicines back in the drawer. As she was leaving, his voice came softly from the bed. Funke. She stopped at the door, turning slowly. Yes? He was silent for 3 whole seconds. Then, thank you. The word came out with difficulty, as if it had to pass through layers of pride before reaching his lips. Funke felt a tightness in her chest. That man had never said thank you to her in weeks of work. Not once. You're welcome, Ogakunle. Anyone would have done the same. No, not just anyone. She stood at the door, not knowing what to say. The boy, he said. Is he your son? Funke felt her stomach drop. He had seen Toby. The thought of being fired flashed through her mind. Yes, he is. I'm sorry. I had no one to leave him with. And how old is he? 1.5 years. Did he sleep through the night? Yes, he did. Adekunle turned his face to the window. You can bring him whenever you need to. No problem. Tell Auntie Rose I authorized it. Funke blinked, waiting for the scolding, for the threat of dismissal. Instead, she received permission. Are you serious, sir? I don't usually joke, Funke. She felt her eyes well up with tears, but she held them back. She wouldn't cry in front of him. She wouldn't. Thank you, Ogakunle. She left. In the hallway, away from the bedroom door, she leaned against the wall and let a single tear run down her cheek. Just one. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand and went to get her son. Inside the room, Adekunle continued to look out the window and, without realizing it, he smiled again. In the days that followed, the mansion continued to operate as usual. Auntie Rose organized, Mama Sikira cooked, Baba Emeka tended the garden. But anyone paying close attention would have noticed something different in the air. Adekunle stopped closing his office door. The door was simply left ajar while he worked. Auntie Rose noticed on the second day and found it strange. In 12 years, that door was only open when someone was cleaning. Now, it stayed that way all afternoon. Auntie Rose, Ogakunle forgot his door open, Funke commented as she passed down the hall with her bucket. He didn't forget. He left it open on purpose. Why? Auntie Rose shrugged. Who knows? But if he's listening to us, we better speak softly. Funke laughed and continued on her way. She didn't realize that inside the office, Adekunle heard her laugh and looked up from his computer. Toby started coming to the mansion twice a week, on the days the creche wasn't open. Funke would set up his corner in the laundry room with his toys, the yellow blanket, and the old phone with cartoons. One Wednesday, Toby escaped from the laundry room. Funke was on the second floor cleaning a bathroom when she heard her son's laughter coming from somewhere in the house. Her heart raced. She dropped the mop and ran downstairs. She found the boy in the hallway outside the office, sitting on the marble floor, tapping a small wooden block against the foot of Adekunle's wheelchair. The sound was rhythmic, almost musical, and Adekunle was just sitting there, looking down at the child who was laughing for no reason at all. Toby, Funke appeared, breathless. I'm so sorry, Ogakunle. He got out, and he's tapping on my chair, Adekunle said in a calm voice. I know. I'll take him away now. I'm so sorry. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying he's been tapping on my chair for about 5 minutes now. Funke paused, looked at Adekunle, then at her son. Toby continued tapping the block, happy as could be, without a care in the world. And Adekunle watched him with an expression Funke had never seen on his face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't irritation. It was curiosity about this child who looked at him without fear, without ceremony, without knowing he was rich or grumpy. He likes the noise, Funke said softly. I noticed. She picked the boy up. Come on, Toby. Let the man work. You can leave him for a bit. Funke's eyes widened. What? If he stays quiet, he can stay there. I need to finish some reports, and I'm not leaving the office anyway. It was the second time Adekunle had yielded. Funke felt a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. All right, but call me if there's any problem. She put Toby down on the office floor with his toys and went back to work. Every time she passed the door, she saw the same scene. The boy playing on the floor and Adekunle working in silence, but a different kind of silence than the house was used to. At the end of the day, When Funke went to get her son, she found Toby asleep on the office rug, wrapped in the yellow blanket. His dummy had fallen out beside him, and next to the boy on the floor was a biscuit that Adekunle had taken from his own drawer and placed near him. He fell asleep about 20 minutes ago, Adekunle said without taking his eyes off the computer. Funke picked up her son carefully and stood there, looking at the biscuit on the floor. A fancy, imported biscuit, the kind that costs a lot, left on the floor for a child who could barely talk. Ogakunle? What? Thank you. Truly. He continued typing, not looking at her. I didn't do anything. But he had. And they both knew it. A biscuit on the floor said more than any words. That night, Funke told her mother. Iya Funke listened quietly, sewing as always. He let Toby stay in the office, Mama. He gave him a biscuit. Iya Funke stopped her needle. And you, my daughter, what are you feeling with all this? Funke took a while to answer. She looked at her plate, at the wall, at anywhere but her mother's eyes. I'm feeling that man is not who he pretends to be. He pretends to be angry, Mama, but inside, he's something else. Be careful, Funke. Careful of what? Of what you're starting to feel. Because the heart doesn't ask if the person is the boss or the employee. The heart just goes. Funke felt silent. Her mother was right. And that was exactly what scared her. It happened on a rainy Tuesday in June. All of Lagos was underwater. The traffic was at a standstill. The streets were flooded. The sky had been dark since dawn. Funke arrived at the mansion soaked, her umbrella turned inside out by the wind. What a day, Auntie Rose. It's like the heavens opened up. Auntie Rose handed her a towel. And it's going to get worse. The forecast is for rain until Friday. The mansion was different on rainy days. The sound of water hitting the large windows made everything quieter. The hallways were dark. Daylight couldn't get in properly. Funke worked all morning on the second floor. After lunch, she went down to clean the library. It was her favorite room in the house. The shelves went from floor to ceiling, filled with old leather-bound books. The windows looked out onto the garden, and when it rained heavily, the sound of the water on the leaves made the whole room feel like a place outside of time. She entered and found Adekunle there alone, with a closed book in his lap, looking out the window. Sorry, Ogakunle. I'll come back later to clean. You can clean. I'm not doing anything. Funke came in and started dusting the shelves. The silence between them was no longer heavy as before. It was a silence they had both learned to share without discomfort. After about 10 minutes, Adekunle spoke without looking at her, his voice low, almost lost in the sound of the rain. My father liked the rain. Funke paused, her cloth in mid-air. She waited. He used to say that rain was nature washing the world to start over. Funke didn't reply. She sat down slowly on a small wooden stool near the bookshelf and just listened, the cloth in her lap. I was 16. We were coming back from a trip. My father was driving. I was in the passenger seat. It was raining heavily. The road was dark, and the surface was slippery. Adekunle spoke slowly, each word seeming to take effort. I was fiddling with a radio, trying to change the music. My father turned to help me, just for a second. 1 second, and the car went off the road. Funke felt the air grow heavy in her chest. The car rolled over 3 times. When it stopped, I was trapped in the seat. My legs were stuck, and I had the taste of blood in my mouth. I turned to my side and saw my father. He wasn't moving. The rain beat against the window. The emergency services got us out of the car. They took me to the hospital. My father. They took him somewhere else. I found out the next day when I woke up in a hospital bed, unable to feel my legs. My mother came into the room, her face red from crying, and told me my father was gone. Adekunle clutched the book in his lap. His knuckles turned white from the force. If I hadn't messed with the radio, he wouldn't have looked away. The car wouldn't have gone off the road. He would still be here. Funke looked at him and saw what Adekunle had been hiding for 20 years beneath the coldness and harshness. It wasn't anger at the world. It was guilt. A guilt that had grown inside him until it consumed everything. Ogakunle, she said, her voice firm but gentle. You were 16 years old. You were a boy. I know how old I was. Then you know that 16-year-old boys fiddle with car radios, that it's normal, that what happened was an accident. I know what it was. It doesn't change how I feel. Funke took a deep breath. Do you think your father would want to see his son living like this? Locked up in this house, not talking to anyone, not smiling, punishing yourself every day. Adekunle turned his face to her. His eyes were red. You didn't know my father. No, but I know what fathers are like. And no father who loves his son wants to see him destroy his own life because of an accident. Not one. The silence lasted so long that Funke thought she had gone too far. She stood up, picked up her cloth, and was about to resume cleaning when Adekunle spoke. No one has ever said that to me. Then it was time someone did. Adekunle lowered his eyes to the book in his lap. The rain continued outside, heavy and constant. And there, inside the library, on that grey June afternoon, two people who should have had nothing in common discovered they had more in common than they imagined. Funke went back to cleaning the shelves. Adekunle went back to looking out the window, but the distance between them had shrunk, and they both noticed. After that afternoon in the library, Adekunle changed, not dramatically, but in the details. He started asking Funke about her day when they passed in the hallway. He asked about Toby. Once, he asked if her mother had recovered from the flu. Funke answered naturally, but inside, she felt her chest tighten more and more. She knew that feeling, knew it well, and knew she couldn't feel it for a man like Adekunle. "Mama, I'm in trouble," she said one night as she put Toby to bed. Iya Funke looked up from her sewing. "What happened?" "I'm starting to like him." Iya Funke dropped her needle. "The Oga? Adekunle? And don't look at me like that, Mama, because I think it's crazy too." Iya Funke took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "My daughter, I won't lie. This worries me. I know, it's not because he's rich. Rich or poor, a good man is a good man. But his world and ours are different. The people from his world won't accept this easily." Funke sat on the bed. "I know that, Mama. That's why I need to leave before it gets worse." "Leave? But the salary. I'll find something else. I always have." Iya Funke looked at her daughter and saw something in her eyes that scared her. Funke was already in love. It wasn't the beginning of a feeling. It was too late to pull it out. At the mansion, Adekunle was fighting his own battle. "Femi, I need to tell you something," he said at their Friday meeting. The lawyer opened his laptop and waited. "Go on. It's not about business." Femi looked up. "Then what is it about?" "Funke." Femi closed his laptop slowly. "The cleaner? Don't call her that. It's what she is, Kunle. She's more than that." Femi leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Kunle, I've been your lawyer and your friend for 15 years, so I'll be direct. The press will destroy you. The partners will question you. I know all of that. And yet," Adekunle looked at Femi with an expression the lawyer had never seen. "For 20 years, I've lived like a man who gave up on everything. And now someone has appeared who has brought life back into this house, who has made me smile, Femi." "Smile?" Femi was quiet for a long time. "And what do you want to do?" "I want to talk to her, but I don't know how." The following Monday, Funke arrived at the mansion determined. She had spent the whole weekend rehearsing. She would resign, she would thank him, wish him all the best, and leave before her heart spoke louder than her reason. She found Auntie Rose in the kitchen. "Auntie Rose, I need to speak with Oga Kunle." Auntie Rose looked at her and understood immediately. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Funke looked away. "It's for the best." "For whom?" "For everyone." Auntie Rose took her hand. "Funke, I've worked in this house for 12 years. I've seen that man treat people like they were furniture, and I've seen him change since you arrived. If you leave, he'll go back to being what he was before." Funke felt her eyes sting but kept her voice steady. "Auntie Rose, I'm a cleaner. He owns half of Lagos. I live in a face me, I face you. People will talk. They'll say I'm after his money, and I'm not that kind of woman. I know you're not, and he knows it too." Funke pressed her lips together and went to the office. She knocked on the door. "Enter." She went in. Adekunle was behind his desk, as always, but when he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. "Oga Kunle, I need to talk to you." "Sit. I'd rather stand." He waited. Funke took a deep breath. "I came to thank you for everything. For the job, the opportunity, for what you did for my son. But I have to leave." "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do." "Right for whom, Funke?" Her voice trembled. "For me. For you. For everyone who will talk about the cleaner and the boss." Adekunle remained silent, looking at her with those dark eyes that Funke had learned to read over the past few months. "And what if I don't want you to go?" Funke felt the ground disappear from under her feet. "Oga Kunle, don't do this to me. I'm being honest. You taught me how to be." She closed her eyes. A tear escaped. "I can't." "Yes, you can. But you're afraid." Funke opened her eyes and looked at him. She saw that Adekunle was afraid too. "We can't," she repeated softly, and left the office before he could reply. Funke didn't come back on Tuesday or Wednesday. She sent a message to Auntie Rose saying she was sick, but they both knew it was a lie. Auntie Rose read the message inside, looking at the empty hallway of the mansion. On Thursday morning, Adekunle called Auntie Rose to his office. "She's not coming back, is she?" Auntie Rose clasped her hands in front of her. "She said she's sick, Oga Kunle." "She's not sick." "I know." Adekunle wheeled his chair to the window, staring at the garden in silence for almost a full minute. Then he turned around and said with a firmness Auntie Rose didn't expect, "Auntie Rose, I need to go to her neighborhood." The housekeeper's eyes widened. "Sir, you've never been there." "Well, now I'm going." "But how?" "The streets there are narrow. There are stairs. There are hills. Get the car ready. The driver can take me to the entrance. I'll handle the rest." Femi called half an hour later. "Auntie Rose told me." "Have you lost your mind?" "Maybe." "Kunle, think about what you're doing." "I'm not going after an employee, Femi. I'm going after the woman I love." The line went silent for 5 seconds. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious in my life." Femi sighed. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." The car stopped at the entrance to her community at 3 p.m. The driver opened the door and set up the wheelchair on the pavement. Adekunle transferred himself to the chair and looked at the street ahead. Movement everywhere. People walking, children running, music blaring from houses, the smell of food in the air. A whole world full of life, right next to the walls of his mansion. The wheelchair drew attention. A man in a dark suit in an expensive wheelchair entering this area. People stopped to stare. Some whispered, others pointed. A boy of about 10 approached him. "Oga, are you lost? I'm looking for the house of Mama Funke." "Funke? Ah, I know her. She lives on the 3rd street, the second house after the bakery. Can you take me there?" The boy walked ahead, and Adekunle pushed his chair along the uneven streets. The wheels got stuck on loose cobblestones. Sweat ran down his forehead. He didn't care. Every meter of that path was worth it. When he arrived at Funke's house, a small crowd had gathered behind him. Neighbors, children, curious people wanting to know what this rich man was doing there. The door was open. Iya Funke appeared first. She looked Adekunle up and down, looked at the wheelchair, looked at the driver standing back, and understood everything without a word being said. "Are you Mama Funke?" "I am." "My name is Adekunle. I need to speak with Funke." Iya Funke stood still for 2 seconds, then turned inside and called out, "Funke, come here, my daughter." Funke appeared with Toby in her arms. When she saw Adekunle there at her door, in his wheelchair, sweating, with half the community watching, she felt her legs go weak. "What are you doing here?" Adekunle looked at her, at the boy, at her mother, at all the faces around them. "Funke, I spent 20 years believing I didn't deserve to be happy. 20 years locked in that house, thinking my life was over. And then you showed up, with your way of talking too much, of not being afraid, of caring for others without asking for anything." Funke felt the tears rolling down her face. "Adekunle, stop." "No, I won't stop. I'm in love with you, completely. I know it's complicated, that people will talk, but I can't live without you anymore, without your laughter, without Toby tapping blocks on my wheelchair." Funke held Toby tightly, her tears falling into her son's hair. "I'm scared, Adekunle. Scared of getting hurt, scared of being judged, scared of not being enough for your world." Adekunle held out his hand. "You don't need to be enough for my world. You already are my entire world." And he smiled, a wide, genuine, fearless smile, the smile that had been hidden for 20 years. Funke placed Toby in her mother's arms, stepped down from the doorway, and took his hand. Their hands fit together, her calloused hand in his firm one. "I love you too. Since the night of the fever, since you called out for your father, and I wanted to take care of you forever." The community applauded. The neighbors, the children, the woman from the bakery, the boy who showed him the way, everyone. And from the doorway, with her grandson in her arms, Iya Funke smiled through tear-filled eyes because she knew her daughter had finally found what she deserved. 6 months later, the Ikoyi mansion was different. The curtains were always open, the windows too. The sound of a child running through the garden filled the house, and no one was told to be quiet. Toby was 2 years old and already speaking single words. Mama was first, Grandma was second, and Kunle, in his own way, was third. He would run through the garden on his short legs, fall, get up, and run again. Baba Emeka, the gardener, was always shooing him away from the rose bushes. "This boy will finish my garden," he'd say, laughing. In the kitchen, Mama Sikira now prepared lunch for 4. Funke, Adekunle, Toby, and Iya Funke, who came for lunch every Wednesday. The cook complained that the menu had changed. Before, it was steak and salad. Now it was jollof rice, fried rice, and a goosey soup. Anoga de Kunle eats everything and asks for more. Proper food, Mama Sikira, Funke would call from the living room, fluffing the sofa cushions. The man spent 20 years eating tasteless things. Now he's making up for lost time. Adekunle would appear at the kitchen door in his wheelchair with a half smile. I can hear you, Funke. Good. Then you know it's true. Auntie Rose watched all of this with an expression that mixed astonishment and satisfaction. In 12 years of working at the mansion, she had never seen the house function like this. With noise, with the smell of real food, with people talking loudly, with a child laughing. Auntie Rose, are you crying? Funke asked one day, finding the housekeeper standing in the living room with moist eyes. Nonsense. It's an allergy to happiness. Then Auntie Rose turned her face to hide her smile. Femi showed up one Saturday morning to sign some documents. He found Adekunle in the garden with Toby on his lap, trying to catch a passing butterfly. I need to say something, Femi said, sitting on the stone bench beside them. Go on. I was wrong about Funke. About everything. Adekunle looked at his friend. What made you change your mind? Femi pointed to the boy on his lap. This. I've known you for 20 years, Kunle. I've never seen you like this. And if one person can do this to another, it doesn't matter where they came from. Adekunle didn't say anything, just nodded. One Wednesday night, after Funke had gone home and Toby was asleep, Adekunle asked Funke to come to the library. She found it odd. At that hour, he was usually in his room reading. What is it? Is everything okay? Sit there. He pointed to the armchair near the window. Funke sat. Curious. Adekunle was serious, but not in the old way. It was a different, focused seriousness. Funke. I want to ask you something. Ask. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Funke's heart stopped. Adekunle, let me speak. He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small stone. I didn't buy the most expensive ring in the shop. I bought the most beautiful one. Because you taught me that the most beautiful things in life are simple. Funke covered her mouth with her hands. Her eyes were already full of tears. Funke Adeyemi, will you marry me? She laughed and cried at the same time. Tears fell as she laughed. It was how Funke dealt with overwhelming happiness by laughing. Oga Kunle, are you proposing to me in the library? No fancy dinner, no champagne, no violins? I can arrange that if you want. I don't want any of that. I want you. Only you. Then answer. Yes. Yes. I want to marry you. Adekunle placed the ring on her finger. Both their hands were shaking. He pulled her close and rested his forehead against hers. They stayed like that for a time. Neither of them counted. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For staying that night of the fever. If you had left, I would never have found my way back. Funke held his face in her hands. I stayed because it was the right thing to do. And I'll stay for the rest of my life because it's what I want. Upstairs, Toby slept in a room that had once been an empty guest room. The yellow blanket, made by Funke, covered the boy from one side of the bed to the other. The Ikoyi mansion was no longer silent, no longer cold, no longer a museum of sadness. It was a home, with the sound of life, the smell of coffee, and the laughter of a child. And a man who finally learned that happiness is not a privilege for those who deserve it, but a right for those who have the courage to accept it.